Tonight we give you a glimpse of rare sea life in an uncharted underwater world. A team of Hawaii scientists spent a month exploring the Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. And as KITV4's Cam Tran shows us, what they found is truly breathtaking.
Scientists recorded 40 different types of fish never before seen in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and Johnston Atoll.
It's biodiversity that we haven't documented. And a lot of these coral reef ecosystems, especially the deeper ones, are under threat from climate change and seawater acidification. So potentially we stand to lose some of this biodiversity before we even know that it exists.
Papahānaumokuākea is a unique place and offers so much to learn from. It's home to dozens of species, seabirds who rest on the islands, and a vast expanse of marine and ocean life, coral reefs, and opportunities to learn from the waters. Papahānaumokuākea is an abundant source of ancestral, biological, and ecological knowledge. My name is Khalil Pa'avaris, and this is Hanohano Nā Kūpuna, exploring Papahānaumokuākea. In this episode, we discuss the abundance of Papahānaumokuākea and all that we can learn from the islands by blending traditional cultural learning with modern scientific techniques. For decades, Papahānaumokuākea has welcomed vanguards of archaeologists, biologists, conservationists, and scientists from across the world coming to learn from the islands. The documentary, In the Wake of Canoes, A Genealogy of Exploration, describes a historical perspective of research in the area.
1923 marked a significant advance in contemporary research of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Archaeologists and biologists aboard the Navy vessel Tanager conducted surveys, collecting specimens and documenting archaeological sites. At Laysan Island, scientists were witness to the extinction of the Laysan honeycreeper through habitat destruction by introduced rabbits. For more than 75 years, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service has conducted and permitted independent research through the Northwest chain to collect information and monitor species and habitats, always putting wildlife first. The remote nature of the region has always made access both difficult and expensive.
For a long time, scientists thought of research as an objective means to learn about the world, to observe, to measure, to collect, and to analyze. However, research is not only about asking the question, but it is also about drawing from ancestral knowledge and experiences to be of use. In the documentary, Papahānaumokuākea, Where Nature and Culture Are One, former chairperson of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, William ʻIke, talked about research and how exploration has evolved.
The science collected from the area is much more robust. New discoveries of plants and animals, a better understanding of seabirds and the mammals, the sort of re-emergence of Hawaiian culture and the merging of Hawaiian culture and science into, biocultural understandings right now that I think both sides are benefiting from.
Hawaiian knowledge is relational in that it integrates the body, the mind, and the spirit, or the objective, subjective, and cultural. Hawaiian knowledge is shaped by the role of history, intention, and function. By using Hawaiian methodologies, research becomes not just an opportunity to learn from Papahānaumokuākea, but also a chance to restore, advance, and empower individual and collective Native Hawaiian functionality.
Aloha o ka alelelo Wong ko'inoa no Kailua Maio. My name is Brad Ka'aleleo Wong from Kailua Oahu. I work for the Department of Interior Office of Native Hawaiian Relations.
Brad has been involved with Papahānaumokuākea for years as part of the Cultural Working Group.
My background is in a lot of ocean-related activities, whether that's canoe paddling, surfing, sailing. And sailing was something that was very important to me for a number of years, and particularly voyaging on sailing on voyaging canoes such as Hokulea, Hikianalia.
Brad has been up to Papahānaumokuākea numerous times, but it never ceases to amaze him.
The number one thing that you notice when you approach the island is just the the sheer number of manu, just so many manu. Obviously, that's one of the things that our Kūpuna used to find different islands, but this is a little bit different because there's just literally thousands upon thousands of manu everywhere, and you'll see them from far out to sea. And approaching the islands, they're all curious. They don't normally see a lot of vessels or ships and things, and as you approach the island, they're all coming to say hi. They're coming to land on the canoe. They're coming to if you're permitted to fish, then they're coming to check out your fishing lines, and yeah, it's something that's totally different. The way to experience the place is really from the moana, and to being able to experience the things that our Kūpuna experienced, to be able to feel the things that they felt, to be able to hear the things that they heard, see all those things. And that's something that really, it's something that's really powerful and can't really be replicated in any other places.
When Brad thinks about collecting data, making scientific observations, or other kinds of research techniques, he sees it as a traditional practice that Native Hawaiians have been doing for centuries.
When we think back to what our Kūpuna did, what our ancestors did, a lot of Kilo was the base of our understanding, to be able to research, to be able to see the changes happening before us, and to make educated decisions upon what we Kilo, right? That's the same exact thing that you do in kind of a contemporary or Western science. This is you making your hypotheses, and you're observing things, you're collecting data, and then you're making your conclusion. And then there's nothing different about it. It's just looking at it from just kind of a different lens or a different way. To me, navigators, voyagers, or even folks that did a lot of Kilo, whatever profession they had back in the day, they were they're kind of those original scientists and folks that adapted to the changes that were presented for them. For me, having spent countless days, hours, weeks at certain times on the ocean, and for those that have spent that kind of time in the ocean, like there's the ocean changes daily. There's a lot of change in it, and to be able to understand, obviously today we've got really cool scientific data about meteorology and weather updates and things, and we totally use that when we're sailing, but at the same time being able to understand what kind of clouds are coming through and what kind of weather that predicts. I think that adds a lot of value, because they'll give you a weather report for a regional area, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen to you right there in the middle of the ocean. And so having, for me, it's important to incorporate a lot of that cultural ʻIke into our scientific understanding, because it just adds depth, right? There are different parts of the puzzle, and they all kind of complement each other and help us to better understand where we are in society and the world, and how the world changes with us daily. Yeah.
When we think about how much of our Kūpuna learned over generations of travel to Papahānaumokuākea, there is still so much for us to rediscover.
And we're all, as Kanaka, still learning about the place, and I think that's another thing for us to kind of understand is, like, we learned. I think they've learned so much about our cultural traditions as well, and I think that's still happening, right? Like, we're still piecing together all these things that we lost during the overthrow and just everything that's happened to Native Hawaiians over the last 200 years, right? So
it will take time to rebuild, to learn, to grow as individuals and as a lahui. But first, we have to make sure that we show up.
I think for the biggest thing is, for us as Native Hawaiians, is to bring presence to the area again. I think this place was, and kind of coming full circle, this place was an area that our Kūpuna traveled, I think, regularly. To me, it was regularly, because our Kūpuna went everywhere. They were literally everywhere. They understood the importance of the place. They understood what was there. Maybe it wasn't just everybody that was going there. And kind of like today, if you're meant to be there, that was the person those were the folks that went. But it was a place that we were, and I think that's a big part about it, is for us to be there again as Kanaka, right? So I think those are important things to show that this is our space.
It's important to combine both science and cultural learnings called a biocultural approach to conservation. By recognizing both the biophysical and socio-cultural components of Papahānaumokuākea, stewards and scientists alike can achieve effective and just conservation outcomes while addressing cultural erosion and biological diversity loss. Keali'i Segum, who you may remember from last episode, understands that traditional knowledge must be a part of modern scientific inquiry.
As a scientist, you're not going to ignore a whole foundation of data that's already there. Like you build off of what's there, and it's just a matter of most Western scientists aren't trained in Olelo Hawaii, and so they don't. That's a whole foundation of knowledge that they don't have access to, just because they don't speak the language. And so I think that yeah, like what you were saying about the mo'olelo, that's our scientific journals is the mo'olelo. And that's where we published things. We published our ʻIke in mo'olelo. And so yeah, I think that it's hard to say that our ʻIke is not as valuable as something that's published in a scientific journal, just because our Kūpuna were more eloquent about the things that they produced.
Hau'oli Lorenzo Ilarco sees it as an opportunity for collaboration.
I think that it's just an individual, but an individual and a collective reawakening of all of us, that when we start thinking of, when we have this island mindset, we think about it from Hawaii all the way to Halaniku, and we don't stop at Niihau. You know, it's this entire space. This is our the Hawaiian universe, right? From this point to that point, and all the surrounding waters that extend from the top of the mountains all the way down to the depths of the ocean. What I also imagine is that this place will be a space where we can co-develop programs, research. We can co-develop mele, or even names. And when I mean co-develop, I mean a collaboration between the Kanaka communities, the scientific communities, the educational communities, the research institutions, and everyone, right? Papahānaumokuākea can be that example of what it looks like when we are inclusive and when we work together. And I really think that it can be a model for what a Hawaiian place actually looks like.
Native Hawaiians continue to weave diverse knowledge systems and perpetuate cultural practices to strengthen pilina to Papahānaumokuākea. These activities include solstice and equinox traditions, ceremonies and research, celestial navigation and wayfinding, Hawaiian archaeology and ethnography, community-based intertidal monitoring, kilo methodologies, maritime career training, scientific diver training, sea level rise, and climate change research, and career pathways through deep sea research.
My name is Pelika Andrade. I'm from Kauai, but spent quite a bit of time on the Big Island as well.
Pelika Andrade is a researcher who began her journey with Papahānaumokuākea through the Ku'ula program.
Especially being from Kauai and growing up reading all of our mo'olelo, our Hawaii mo'olelo, that talked about Kanehuna and Koehelani and Holaniku and all of these places that these I can't find the words, I'm sorry. All these quests, if you will, right? Kavayakan and all of these others. Kind of going up there and having that conversation of what our Kūpuna and our other Hawaii have administered to Papahānaumokuākea as po and all of these our Kūpuna islands. Kind of those connections started to happen for me, and it was, and then also just in a physical way, being able to understand that our Hawaii is much more broader and grander than Hawaii to Ni'ihau Kaula, right? Because right now, a lot of us look at ʻAʻina in the main Hawaiian Islands, but we forget that we have another 2/3 to 3/4 of Hawaii that are in Papahānaumokuākea. So that's where that journey started.
For Pelika, tradition and science go hand in hand.
We sometimes get lost in defining, having to just talk back to how the status quo values our world, right? And we can find all the ways in which Papahānaumokuākea ties into the obvious, what we deem cultural and traditional identified things and all of that. What I like to think of at the end of the day, again, leaning hard into traditional relationships, is that we have taken up so much space in this world that this is a great, we need to give some back. The label of Western science, the label of Indigenous science, if for me, kind of, I don't stick on that. I dive into, is it going to support my understanding of supporting ʻAina momona? And for me, that's the tradition I want to support, ʻAina momona.
Just like Brad, Pelika understands that our Kūpuna were researchers, just like she is today.
Have to understand about tradition is knowledge is a product of tradition, right? The things that we know are a product of the traditions that we have, the values that we have, and the relationships that we have, right? So knowledge, what we know, is based off of relationships, and that relationship is continually updated, right? Western science is a tool to help support the inquiry to support thriving communities. Indigenous science is a great tool for the inquiry to help support productive and thriving communities, right? So it's a kind of a shuffling and a resetting of what we consider science and tradition, and really digging past like the real obvious things that we've placed and we have been put out in the world as tradition, and really going and asking the whys and the whys and the whys past that. So the projects that I engage in and I support, all of them, whether it's inquiry or it's just supporting the work on the ground or it's trying to include our community, is all about how do I support thriving and productive communities. So if it's recruiting and engaging our Native Hawaiian community and just knowing about the islands, that's effort that is very, very valuable. If it's supporting fish and wildlife or NOAA in marine debris removal, or looking at invasive species eradication or removals, it's all in support of thriving and productive community, right? Like we've seen in our main Hawaiian Islands how much of our world is impacted by invasive species, and how much of our Kūpuna cannot thrive, like our koa'e and our moli and our other birds, and how much we're losing because of invasive species. And we don't want that to happen in our Kūpuna Islands. Even here we don't, right? So there's those what are deemed management activities that are really about supporting thriving and productive communities. And it's very much an investment of our Native Hawaiian community to participate in that. Being on island, being able to implement some of our tools like Kuli'ia, which is an observational tool to help us understand seasonality and identify trends and identify correlating trends that now support actionable initiatives, right? Of when to pair actions into the identified trends and the identified correlations are all tools to help us start to complement and optimize our production and our thrivingness.
Western and indigenous scientists can work in tandem, but there is still something to be said about letting your na'au lead the way.
We all know our islands have kuleana, and we have moku, and we have our place-based responsibilities and social ties, and that Papahānaumokuākea, especially in Ihoa, is directly related to Kauai and Ni'ihau, and there's a strong social, political, historical relationship there, and also that relationship as it applies to access to moku manamana for ceremony, and Kauai and Ni'ihau and Nihoa playing a very huge role in that access. You know, you wouldn't pass as a voyager, or someone trying to get there, you wouldn't pass Kauai without stopping, provisioning, getting kind of the nod of approval and support of the politics here in Kauai, and even to a certain extent a navigator to take you up there successfully, right? So there's all of these layers of connecting dots and then trying to see where our contemporary responsibilities and efforts can be. We are all products of our history, right? Politically, socially, and everything. So there's a lot of empowerment kind of things happening, and trying to take power or empower ourselves to be more active in our own determination, our self-determination, and Papahānaumokuākea is included in that journey.
Aʻohe pau ka ʻike I ka Hālau Hoʻokāhi. All knowledge is not taught in the same school. How we understand Papahānaumokuākea can change how we understand ourselves and our relationship to the land.
When you go over there, you can't help but like reconnect on a much deeper spiritual level. So much of Hawaiian spirituality and sort of ancestral sort of connection depends on the integrity of the environment, right?
That's Dr. Kekuava Kikiloi, whose voice you may remember from earlier episodes. For him, Papahānaumokuākea can teach us more about who we are as Hawaiians.
We're at a stage now where our community is really being empowered and is able to, shed some of the historical trauma from the past and able to look at these things and realize that, this place should be a part of our consciousness today, but it can also help us to sort of reroute into a sort of an ancestral perspective of what being Hawaiian is all about.
Papahānaumokuākea can teach us so much about our world, but it's important to remember that it's a reciprocal relationship. Papahānaumokuākea gives us knowledge, and we give it back out into the world. In the documentary, In the Wake of Canoes, A Genealogy of Exploration, researcher Randy Kosaki sees Papahānaumokuākea as what Hawaii should really be.
A window into the past. They show us what the main Hawaiian Islands used to look like, maybe what they could look like in the future if we manage our marine resources correctly. But they show us what the main Hawaiian Islands, our coral reefs, really should like. The abundance of fish, the abundance of marine life in general, the behavior of those animals. They've never seen human beings before. For the most part, they're utterly fearless.
Papahānaumokuākea is critically important to Native Hawaiians, the scientific community, and the world at large. But its importance doesn't make it immune from threats.
We've been going out 2 times a year for 1 month at a time on a charter vessel to head up into Papahānaumokuākea and clean up the areas that are the most in need of attention, cleaning up the marine debris accumulation hotspots and focusing on entanglement hazards for Hawaiian monk seals and the green sea turtles, and ingestion hazards for seabirds.
Next episode, we talk about the protections of Papahānaumokuākea.